A runaway boy shielded a veiled woman from robbers. His blood touched her skin and glowed pure gold. She revealed herself as the Vampire King's wife, stunned because human blood should burn her, not heal her. Hours later, 30 armored vampire riders stormed the port town, searching for the boy with sunlight in his veins. The knife came out of nowhere. Kai saw the blade flash under the dock lanterns a second before it would have buried itself in the woman's throat. He didn't think, didn't plan. His body just moved, 15 years of street survival kicking in as he lunged forward and shoved her aside. The steel caught him instead, slicing clean across his forearm. "Stay back," Kai shouted at the 3 men closing in, his voice cracking embarrassingly. Blood soaked through his torn sleeve, hot and sticky. The woman stumbled against the warehouse wall behind him, her dark veil askew, one pale hand pressed to her ribs where she'd been struck. The lead robber, a bull of a man with a scar splitting his lip, laughed. "Stupid kid. You just died for some rich merchant's wife." "Run," Kai hissed over his shoulder at the woman. His arm screamed with pain, but he kept it raised, kept himself between her and the blades.
"Go. Now."
She didn't run. Instead, she whispered something that made his blood turn to ice. "You're bleeding on me." Kai glanced down. A single drop of his blood had fallen from his arm onto her exposed wrist where her sleeve had torn. And it was glowing. Not reflecting light. Glowing. Like molten gold spreading across her skin, warm and bright as summer sun. The woman gasped, not in pain, but in shock. The bruise darkening her ribs vanished. The cut on her cheek sealed itself closed. Even her torn dress seemed to straighten, as if time itself had reversed. "What the hell?" the scarred robber breathed. Kai stared at his own arm. The knife wound was closing. Not healing slowly, but sealing, skin knitting together in seconds, the pain evaporating like morning mist. A faint golden shimmer danced along the closing cut before fading completely. The woman's veil slipped fully away. She was beautiful in a way that didn't seem real. Porcelain skin that had never seen sunlight. Eyes like polished silver coins. Hair black as a raven's wing, falling in waves past her shoulders. But it was her teeth that made Kai's heart stop. When her lips parted in shock, he saw the delicate points of fangs. "Yura," the word died in his throat. "Vampire," she finished softly. Her silver eyes were locked on his arm, on the place where his blood had touched her. "And you shouldn't exist." The robbers had gone silent, their greed replaced by primal fear. Everyone knew vampires stayed in their mountain kingdoms across the eastern sea. They didn't walk among humans in coastal port towns. They didn't need money or jewels. And they definitely didn't let themselves get cornered in alleys by common thieves. "Forget the gold," the scarred man whispered, backing away. "Forget all of it. We're leaving." "Wait." Kai started, but they were already running, footsteps echoing off the warehouse walls as they vanished into the maze of docks. He was alone with her now, with a vampire. His mind raced through every story he'd heard growing up. Creatures of the night, unable to walk in sunlight, sustained by blood, powerful enough to tear a man apart with bare hands. He should run. Every instinct screamed at him to run. But she was staring at his arm like she'd seen a ghost.
"How?"
Her voice trembled. "Human blood burns us. It's poison. But yours," she touched her own wrist where his blood had fallen. The skin there was smooth, unblemished, almost glowing with health. "You healed me. Your blood healed me." "I don't know what you're talking about." Kai took a step back, then another. His arm looked completely normal now, no scar, no mark, nothing to show he'd been cut at all.
"I'm nobody.
Just a street kid. I don't have whatever you think I have. What's your name?" "Doesn't matter." Another step back. The dock stretched behind him, fishing boats creaking in their moorings. If he could just reach the main street, lose himself in the tavern crowds. "Please," the vampire woman moved with impossible grace, closing the distance between them in a heartbeat. She didn't grab him, didn't threaten. just looked at him with those ancient silver eyes. I'm not going to hurt you. My name is Morel.
I'm
I'm the wife of the Vampire King. And what just happened, what you did, it's impossible. It's been impossible for 400 years. Kai's legs felt weak. The Vampire King. The actual, literal king of the vampire territories that stretched across the eastern mountains. He'd saved the queen of vampires from a robbery. I have to tell him, Morel continued, her voice urgent but not unkind. He needs to know you exist. Your blood, it's called sunlight blood. It was thought to be extinct, lost to. Kay bolted. He didn't let her finish. Didn't wait for explanations or promises or whatever she was going to say next. He just ran, his worn boots pounding against the wooden dock, splashing through puddles left by the evening tide. Behind him, he heard Morel call out, but he didn't look back. Sunlight blood. Extinct. The Vampire King. None of it made sense. All of it terrified him. Kai had been on his own since he was 11, when the orphanage in the capital had burned down, and he'd struck out on his own rather than get shuffled into another institution. For years of stealing to eat, sleeping in warehouses, staying invisible. For years of being nobody, and that was exactly how he'd wanted it. Now a vampire queen knew his face, knew what his blood could do. He ran until his lungs burned, until the docks gave way to the cramped streets of the Port's Edge district, until he could duck into the familiar shadows of an abandoned mill he'd been sleeping in for the past 3 weeks. Only when he was hidden in the loft, surrounded by old grain sacks and the smell of must, did he let himself breathe. His arm was perfect, completely healed. He rolled up his sleeve to check again, running his fingers over skin that should have been torn open and bleeding. "What am I?" he whispered to the darkness. The darkness didn't answer. But somewhere in the distance, he heard the sound of hoofbeats. Many hoofbeats. Coming from the direction of the docks. Coming fast. The hoofbeats grew louder, echoing through the narrow streets like thunder. Kai pressed himself against the mill's back wall, peering through a crack in the weathered boards. The port town's main square was visible from here, usually empty this late except for drunk sailors stumbling back to their ships. Tonight, it was filling with people. Frightened people, spilling from taverns and homes, pointing toward the eastern gate. Then he saw them. 30 riders poured through the town gate in perfect formation, their horses black as midnight, their armor gleaming silver even in the dim lamplight. Each rider wore a crimson cloak that billowed behind them like wings. At their hips hung swords that seemed to drink in the light rather than reflect it. Vampires. An entire squadron of vampire knights. "Dear gods," someone whispered in the square. "They've never come here before. Not in living memory." Kai's heart hammered against his ribs. This was because of him. Because of what happened at the docks. Morel had said she needed to tell the king, but he'd never imagined this, an army arriving within hours. How fast could vampires move? The lead rider dismounted with fluid grace. He was tall, with hair like spun platinum and eyes that glowed faintly red in the darkness. When he spoke, his voice carried across the square without shouting, as if the air itself was carrying his words. "People of Saltmere Port, we mean you no harm. We seek a boy, 15 years of age, dark hair, thin build. He would have been at the western docks approximately 2 hours ago." The vampire's gaze swept across the crowd. "We know he's here. And we know what he carries in his veins." Murmurs rippled through the gathered townspeople. Kai recognized faces in the crowd. The fishmonger who sometimes gave him scraps, the tavern owner who'd chased him off 3 times this month, the harbor master who pretended not to see him sleeping in warehouses. "What's the boy done?" the harbor master called out, brave or foolish enough to address a vampire knight directly. "Nothing." The platinum-haired vampire's expression was unreadable. "He saved the life of Lady Morel, wife of our king. She wishes to thank him.
To speak with him.
We are here to ensure his safety." Liar, Kai thought. If they just wanted to talk, they wouldn't need 30 armed soldiers. "The boy has sunlight blood," another vampire called out, this one with a scarred face and colder eyes. A gift that hasn't been seen in centuries. If he comes willingly, he'll be treated as an honored guest. If we must search every building in this town, he let the threat hang in the air. The crowd shifted nervously. Kai saw hands drifting toward belt knives, toward anything that might serve as a weapon. But what good were fishermen's blades against vampire knights? "We don't know anything about any boy," a woman shouted. "This is a port town. We get dozens of street kids passing through every week." "Then you won't mind if we look," the platinum-haired vampire gestured, and his riders began to fan out across the square. Kai backed away from the crack in the wall, his mind racing. The mill had 2 exits, the main door that opened onto the square, and a service entrance in the back that led to the salt marshes. If he moved now, while they were still organizing their search, he might make it to the marshes before they reached this building. But where would he go after that? The next town was 2 days' walk inland. He had no money, no food, no. A hand clamped over his mouth. Kai tried to scream, but the grip was iron strong. He was pulled backward into deeper shadows, away from the crack in the wall. His attacker spun him around, and he found himself staring into the weathered face of old Marcus, the mill's former owner, who everyone thought had died last winter. "Don't make a sound," Marcus hissed. His eyes were wild, frightened. "I know what you are, boy. Saw the glow from your arm earlier when you came in. You think you're the first sunlight blood to hide in this town."
Que froze.
Marcus released his mouth slowly. "You're," Kai started. "Dead. If those knights find me." Marcus grabbed a loose floorboard and pried it up, revealing a narrow space beneath. "I was a scholar once before I ran. I studied the old bloodlines. Thought they were all gone." He shoved Kai toward the hole. "Get under. Don't come out until morning, no matter what you hear." "Why are you helping me?" "Because I know what they do to sunlight bloods who fall into the wrong hands." Marcus's expression darkened. "The vampires say they want to protect you. Maybe some do. But that blood of yours? It's not just healing power, boy. It's the key to something far more dangerous." Outside, the sound of boots on cobblestones grew closer. "Get in.
Now."
Kai dropped into the cramped space beneath the floorboards. The last thing he saw before Marcus sealed him in darkness was the old man's sad, knowing smile. "They won't find you tonight," Marcus whispered through the cracks. "But they'll never stop looking." The sea crossing took 3 hours at vampire speed. Morel stood at the bow of the sleek black ship, watching the moonlight dance across the waves. Her hands still trembled. Not from fear. She was centuries old, far beyond such mortal concerns, but from what she'd witnessed. From what that boy's blood had done to her. The Silvercrest castle rose from the eastern cliffs, like a crown of silver spires. Home. Her husband would be waiting, likely pacing the throne room as he always did when she traveled to human territories against his wishes. She touched her wrist again, the place where Kai's blood had fallen. The skin felt warm, alive in a way it hadn't in decades. Vampires didn't age, didn't sicken, but they faded. Slowly, imperceptibly, their vitality drained away over centuries until they became hollow shells walking through endless night. She'd felt that fading in herself, had accepted it as the price of immortality. Until one drop of golden blood had reversed it all. The ship docked at the private royal harbor. Morel barely registered the guard's salutes as she strode through the castle's main gates. She needed to see him, needed to make him understand what this meant. King Theron was indeed in the throne room, though not pacing. He sat perfectly still on his silver throne, a book open in his lap, one of his ancient histories, no doubt. He looked up as she entered, and relief flooded his pale features. Morel, he was beside her in an instant, hands on her shoulders, silver eyes searching her face. "The riders said there was an attack. That you were hurt." She caught his hands in hers. "Theron, I need you to listen very carefully to what I'm about to tell you. Don't interrupt. Don't dismiss it as impossible. Just listen." He frowned but nodded. She told him everything. The robbery, the boy who'd thrown himself between her and the blade, the moment his blood touched her skin. She described the golden glow, the instant healing, the way her faded strength had surged back to life. When she finished, Theron was silent for a long moment. Then he walked to the throne room's massive window, staring out at the mountain ranges that marked the edge of their kingdom. "Sunlight blood," he said quietly. "I thought I destroyed the last of it." Morel's breath caught. "What?" 400 years ago, during the Purge, Theron's voice was hollow. "When I was still a prince, still young and foolish enough to believe in absolute solutions, the sunlight-blooded humans were hunted by both sides. Humans feared them, thought they were corrupted. We vampires," he turned to face her, and she saw ancient guilt in his eyes. "We saw them as weapons, too dangerous to exist. My father ordered their extinction. I led the final hunt myself. You never told me. I'm not proud of it." He moved back to her, cupping her face gently. "But if what you're saying is true, if this boy truly has that power, then someone survived. Someone kept the bloodline hidden for 4 centuries. What does the blood really do?" Morel asked. "Beyond healing?" Theron walked to a locked cabinet at the chamber's edge. From it, he withdrew a leather-bound tome so old the pages crumbled at the edges. He opened it carefully, revealing illustrations of humans with golden light radiating from their veins. "Sunlight blood doesn't just heal vampires," he said. "It changes us. Temporarily, but profoundly. A vampire who drinks sunlight blood can walk in daylight for a full day and night, can cross running water, can enter homes uninvited. All the ancient limitations of our kind, erased." Morel's eyes widened. "That's impossible. Our nature can't be changed. Not by anything else, no. But this," he tapped the ancient text. "This is why both species tried to eliminate them. Imagine an army of vampires who could walk in the sun, who could hunt anywhere, anytime, who would become truly unstoppable." "The boy didn't know," Morel said quickly. "He was terrified. He ran before I could explain anything. And now he's hiding in a human port town with my knights searching for him." Theron closed the book. "If word spreads about what he is, every vampire house will want him. Every human kingdom will want him dead. He's the most valuable and most endangered creature alive. We have to protect him. We have to contain him." Theron's expression hardened. "That power can't fall into the wrong hands, Morel. Not again. I've seen what happens when desperate vampires get hold of sunlight blood. They don't just drink it once. They drain the source completely, killing the human to gain permanent daylight immunity. This boy isn't a source to be drained. He's a child who saved my life. A child carrying the key to either our salvation or our complete destruction." Theron moved to the door, calling for his advisors. "I've ordered a controlled search. The knights have strict instructions. Find him, earn his trust, bring him here safely. No force. No threats." "And then what?" Morel demanded. "Lock him in a tower? Study him like some specimen?" Theron met her eyes. "And then we figure out why fate has brought sunlight blood back into the world. Because I promise you, beloved, it's not coincidence. Something is coming. Something that requires a bridge between our kind and humanity. Or something that requires a weapon," Morel whispered. Neither of them had an answer for that. Kai waited until dawn before crawling out from beneath the floorboards. The mill was empty. Old Marcus was gone. No sign he'd ever been there except for the disturbed dust and the loose board that had hidden Kai through the night. Through the walls, he'd heard the vampire knights searching, heard their boots on the mill stairs, heard their voices discussing whether to tear the building apart. Marcus had somehow convinced them to move on. Or maybe they'd simply missed the hidden space. Either way, Kai was alive. But he couldn't stay. He'd heard enough through the floorboards to understand his situation. The vampires weren't going to stop searching. They'd be watching the roads, the docks, every route out of town. Which meant he needed to disappear in the one way they wouldn't expect. Kai slipped through the mill's back entrance and made his way to the merchant district. The morning market was already bustling. Vendors setting up stalls, traders haggling over prices, and most importantly, a caravan preparing to leave. 3 covered wagons loaded with textiles and spices, heading inland toward the capital city. He'd stowed away on caravans before. It was all about timing. The lead merchant, a round man with a thick beard, was arguing with his drivers about weight distribution.
Perfect.
Kai waited until all 3 men had their backs turned, then slipped beneath the rear wagon, hooking himself onto the undercarriage support beams. It was uncomfortable and dangerous, but it would work for the first few miles until they were clear of town. The caravan lurched into motion an hour later. Kai clung to the wooden beams, muscles burning as the wagon bounced over the rough coastal road. He could see the ground rushing past beneath him, could smell horse dung and road dust. But he was moving, away from the port, away from the vampire nights. After 2 miles, when the caravan stopped to water the horses, Kai rolled out from under the wagon and scrambled into the actual cargo area, burying himself between bolts of wool fabric. Much better. He could breathe without eating dust, and if anyone checked, he'd look like just another bundle of goods. The wagon rolled on through the morning. Kai dozed fitfully, exhausted from his sleepless night. When he finally woke, the sun was high and voices were talking nearby. Heard the vampires were looking for some street kid, one of the drivers was saying. Said he had magic blood or something. Daybreak blood. Another voice corrected. That's what the old stories call it. Supposed to be able to turn night into day, or some such nonsense. Ain't nonsense if 30 vampire knights are hunting for it. Kai held his breath, pressing himself deeper into the fabrics. My grandfather used to tell tales about the daybreak blooded, the first driver continued. Said they were like walking miracles. Could heal any wound, cure any sickness. But they were hunted to extinction because both humans and vampires wanted to control them. Well, if there's one still alive, poor bastard's not going to stay that way for long. You seen the kind of gold the vampire houses are offering? 5,000 silver crescents for information leading to his capture. Capture, not death, mind you. They want him alive. 5,000 silver crescents. That was enough money to buy a small estate. Kai's hands trembled. Everyone would be looking for him now. Not just vampires, but bounty hunters, desperate merchants, anyone who wanted to get rich quick. He glanced down at his arm, at the place where the knife had cut him last night. The skin was perfect, unblemished. He pressed his thumb against it, hard enough to hurt. For a moment, he thought he saw a faint golden shimmer beneath the surface, like sunlight trapped under his skin. What was he? Why was his blood different from everyone else's? He'd been found as a baby, left at the orphanage with nothing but a blanket and a strange silver medallion the headmistress had kept in her office. No note, no name.
No explanation.
The headmistress had called him Kai because it meant ocean in the old tongue, and he'd been found near the docks. But what if there had been a reason he was abandoned? What if whoever left him had been trying to hide him? The wagon suddenly lurched to a halt. Why are we stopping? The merchant's voice called out. Roadblock, sir. Armed men ahead. Kai's heart sank. He crawled carefully to a gap in the canvas covering and peered out. A dozen men blocked the road, wearing mismatched armor and carrying crossbows. Not soldiers. Not guards. Their weapons were silver-tipped, designed specifically for hunting vampires, or in this case, someone vampires wanted. Bounty hunters. The leader approached the merchant, a cruel smile on his scarred face. We're searching all caravans heading inland. Looking for a runaway boy, about 15 years old. Dark hair. Might be hiding in cargo. I don't transport stowaways, the merchant said nervously. Then you won't mind if we check. The hunters began moving toward the wagons. Kai looked around desperately. The cargo area had no other exit. If they opened the canvas, they'd see him immediately. His eyes fell on a small knife one of the drivers had left near the supplies, probably for cutting rope. He grabbed it, his mind racing. Could he fight?
Could he run?
Neither option seemed likely to succeed. The canvas began to lift at the back of the wagon. Kai pressed himself against the front wall, trapped, the knife trembling in his hand. Through the fabric, he could see shadows moving, could hear the hunters climbing up to search. His arm began to glow softly, golden light seeping through his sleeve.
No, not now.
Not where they could see. But the light grew brighter, responding to his fear, to his desperation. One of the hunters shouted, "I see something. There's a light." Kai threw himself out of the wagon before they could grab him. He hit the ground hard, rolled, and came up running. Behind him, the hunters shouted. Crossbow bolts hissed through the air, one slamming into a wagon wheel inches from his head. "Don't kill him," the scarred leader roared. "The blood's worthless if he's dead." Kai sprinted for the tree line 50 yards away. His lungs burned. His legs screamed. But the golden glow in his veins seemed to push him faster, stronger than he should have been. He could feel it coursing through him like liquid sunlight, making his exhausted muscles surge with impossible energy. He'd almost reached the trees when something slammed into his shoulder, spinning him around. Not a bolt. A weighted net, designed to tangle and trap. Kai crashed to the ground, mesh wrapping around his limbs. He clawed at it desperately, but the ropes were reinforced with silver thread that burned his skin wherever it touched. The hunters closed in, moving with the practiced efficiency of men who'd done this many times before. "Easy now, boy," the scarred leader said, kneeling beside Kai. "We're not going to hurt you.
Much.
Just need a little sample of that special blood you're carrying." He pulled out a silver blade, its edge gleaming. "Hold still." "Get away from me." Kai thrashed in the net, but 2 hunters pinned his arms down. The blade cut across his palm, quick, precise, shallow. Blood welled up immediately, and in the bright afternoon sunlight, it gleamed gold. Not just at the edges, but throughout, like melted treasure flowing from his veins. The hunters stared, mesmerized. "Gods above," one breathed. "The stories are true. That's daybreak blood." The scarred leader held up a glass vial, positioning it to catch the dripping blood. "Do you know what this is worth? Not just the bounty, though 5,000 crescents is a fine start. But the blood itself? Vampire lords will pay a king's ransom for a single vial. And we've got the whole source right here." Kai watched his blood drip into the vial, golden and shimmering. But something was happening. The cut on his palm was already closing, skin knitting together impossibly fast. The wound sealed completely in seconds, leaving no scar, no mark. The scarred leader's eyes widened. "Did you see that? It heals instantly, which means we can harvest as much as we want without killing him." His smile turned predatory. "You just became the most profitable cargo we've ever taken, boy." "No," Kai's voice came out stronger than he felt. The golden light was building inside him again, responding to his fear, to his rage. He could feel it pushing against his skin, demanding release. "Let me go." "Not a chance." The light exploded outward. Kai didn't know how he did it. Didn't understand the power that suddenly erupted from his body in a wave of pure golden radiance. The net disintegrated, silver threads melting away like snow under summer sun. The hunters stumbled backward, shielding their eyes from the blinding brightness. For one perfect moment, Kai blazed like a star. Then the light vanished, and he collapsed, gasping. Whatever he'd done had drained him completely. His vision swam. His muscles felt like water. But he was free. The hunters were still reeling, blinking away after images. Kai forced himself to his feet and ran, stumbling into the forest. Behind him, he heard the scarred leader shouting orders, heard them crashing through the underbrush in pursuit. The forest was dense, all twisted roots and low-hanging branches. Kai ducked under, leaped over, pushed through, running on pure instinct and fading adrenaline. The glow in his veins had dimmed to almost nothing. He was running out of whatever power had saved him. An arrow hissed past his ear. They were getting closer. He could hear their boots, their curses, the sound of blades cutting through foliage. There was no way he could outrun them. Not like this. Not when he could barely keep his legs moving. Kai burst into a small clearing and skidded to a halt. 3 more hunters stood waiting, crossbows raised. They'd circled around, cut off his escape. He spun, looking for any way out, but the original group was already emerging from the trees behind him.
Trapped.
End of the line, Daybreak Boy, the scarred leader said, breathing hard. That little light show was impressive, but you're spent now. I can see it in your eyes.
He was right.
Kai could barely stand. The world tilted dangerously, and he dropped to his knees, arms shaking with exhaustion. The leader raised his silver blade again. Let's try this one more time. And if you try another trick like that, we'll cut something more vital than your hand. Understand? Kai closed his eyes. He had nothing left. No strength.
No clever escape. No.
A shadow fell across the clearing. The hunter leader looked up, and his face went pale. What in the hells? Something dropped from the trees above, something fast and impossibly graceful. A figure in a dark traveling cloak, moving with the fluid precision of a predator. Before any hunter could react, the figure disarmed 3 of them with a sweep of his walking staff, sent 2 more flying with precise strikes, and caught the leader's descending blade with his bare hand. Gentlemen, the figure said in a cultured voice tinged with amusement, I believe you're hunting something that doesn't belong to you. He turned slightly, and Kai saw his face in the dappled sunlight. Pale skin, sharp features, eyes that gleamed with ancient intelligence. Another vampire. But this one smiled at the hunters with genuine menace. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Varric, and this boy is under my protection. The hunters didn't run. They should have, but greed made men stupid. The scarred leader yanked his blade free from Varric's grip, or tried to. The vampire held it effortlessly, then bent the silver steel with his bare hand until it snapped like a twig. Silver weapons, Varric observed mildly. How quaint. Did you truly think these would protect you from one of my kind? He dropped the broken pieces. Last chance, gentlemen. Walk away. There's one of you and 12 of us, the leader growled, though his voice shook. Even a vampire can be brought down with enough bolts. Perhaps Varric's smile widened, showing the pointed tips of his fangs. Shall we test that theory? They attacked as one, a coordinated strike meant to overwhelm through sheer numbers. Crossbow bolts flew from 3 directions while hunters charged with silver-tipped spears. Varric moved like water. He wasn't there when the bolts arrived, already spinning past 2 hunters and disarming them with strikes too fast for Kai's eyes to follow. A spear thrust at his chest. He caught it, redirected it into the ground, and used the embedded shaft to vault over his attackers. He landed behind them, swept one man's legs out from under him, and caught another's crossbow before it could fire, crushing the mechanism with casual strength. It was over in 30 seconds. The hunters lay groaning on the forest floor, disarmed and defeated but alive. Varric hadn't killed a single one. He stood in the center of the clearing, not even breathing hard, his dark cloak barely disturbed. Consider this a lesson in knowing when you're outmatched, Varric said pleasantly. Now go. Before I reconsider my mercy. They went, limping and scrambling back toward the road, leaving their weapons scattered across the clearing. Kai tried to stand but couldn't. His legs refused to cooperate. The vampire turned toward him, and instinctive terror flooded through Kai's exhaustion. Easy, Varric said, raising his hands in a peaceful gesture. I meant what I said. You're under my protection. He crouched down to Kai's level, keeping a respectful distance. That was quite a display back there. The golden burst of light. Very dramatic. Also very dangerous. You nearly burned yourself out.
Who are you?
Kai managed. I told you.
Varric.
Though I suppose that's not particularly helpful without context, the vampire settled into a sitting position, as if they were simply having a pleasant conversation in the woods. I'm a historian. A scholar. I spend my time studying the old bloodlines, the forgotten powers, the things most of my kind have chosen to forget. His eyes, pale green, unusual for a vampire, studied Kai with genuine curiosity. I've been searching for evidence of sunlight blood for 70 years. Imagine my surprise when I heard rumors of a daybreak-blooded boy appearing in a coastal port town. You've been following me. Since you left Saltmere? Yes. I wanted to observe before approaching. Make sure you were genuine. Varric gestured at Kai's hand, which still bore faint golden traces where the cut had healed. You're genuine. More than genuine. You're the most powerful sunlight blood I've ever documented. And I've read accounts of all of them. All of them are dead, Kai said bitterly.
Yes.
Which is why your existence is both miraculous and terrifying. Varric's expression grew serious. Do you know what happened to your ancestors? The original sunlight-blooded humans?
Kai shook his head.
They were hunted by both sides during the species wars 4 centuries ago. Humans feared them as corrupted, touched by vampire magic. Vampires wanted to exploit them, drain them for power. Varric pulled out a small leather journal from his cloak. The last confirmed sunlight blood was a woman named Alara Brightveins. She disappeared in 1625, supposedly killed by King Theron's purge. But there were rumors she escaped, that she fled far north and went into hiding. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know what you are. And because unlike the King's knights currently tearing apart the countryside looking for you, I don't want to cage you or use you. Varric met his eyes directly. I want to help you understand your gift. Maybe even control it, so you don't accidentally burn yourself to ash trying to defend yourself. The king's wife said my blood healed her. Kai said quietly. That it's impossible. It's not impossible. It's just forgotten. Varric opened his journal, showing pages of careful notes and sketches. Sunlight blood has 3 primary properties. First, it heals vampires, not just wounds, but the fading that happens to our kind over centuries. Second, it can grant temporary immunity to our traditional weaknesses.
And third, he paused.
Third, in moments of extreme stress, it can manifest as pure concentrated daylight, which is what you did back there. Kai looked at his hands. They seemed normal now, just a skinny teenager's hands, dirt under the fingernails. I don't want this. I didn't ask for any of this. No one asks for the gifts they're born with. Or the burdens. Varric stood, offering his hand. But you have a choice now. You can keep running, and eventually the hunters or the knights will find you. Or you can come with me. I have a sanctuary in the northern mountains, warded, hidden, safe. I can teach you about your heritage. Help you learn to control what's inside you. Why would you do that? What do you get out of it? Knowledge, Varric said simply. And perhaps the chance to preserve something beautiful that the world tried to destroy. He kept his hand extended. I won't force you. That would make me no better than the ones hunting you. But I promise you this. If you come with me, I will never take your blood without permission. Never use you as a tool. Never betray your trust. Kai stared at the offered hand. Every instinct screamed not to trust a vampire. But Varric had saved him. Had defeated the hunters without killing them. And those pale green eyes held something that looked almost like kindness. Slowly, Kai reached up and took his hand. They traveled north for 3 days, keeping to forgotten trails and abandoned roads. Varric moved through the daylight without any trouble, which surprised Kai until the vampire explained about cloud cover and the thick canopy of the ancient forest. Direct sunlight is the problem, he said as they walked. Diffused light through trees? Uncomfortable, but manageable for short periods. Still, they traveled mostly at night, sleeping during the brightest hours in caves or dense thickets. Kai learned that Varric was nothing like the monsters from tavern stories. He didn't hunt humans, survived on animal blood supplemented by rare herbs. He told terrible jokes. He sang old ballads in a language Kai didn't recognize. And he was endlessly patient with Kai's questions. Why are you alone? Kai asked on the second night as they made camp in a rocky hollow. Don't vampires live in courts and houses? Most do. Varric built a small fire, more for Kai's comfort than his own need. I was part of the Silvercrest court once, actually. one of King Theron's scholars. But I disagreed with his methods during the purge. When I spoke out against the slaughter of the sunlight-blooded, he exiled me. He smiled sadly. Turns out having principles is inconvenient when you serve a king. You knew about what he did? About killing my ancestors? I witnessed it. Varric's expression darkened. I was there when they raided the last known sunlight blood village. 37 people, Kai. Men, women, children. Theron claimed it was necessary, that their power was too dangerous to exist. I argued that we could have protected them, hidden them, but he shook his head. I was young then. Naive. I thought I could change minds with logic. Kai pulled his knees to his chest, staring into the fire. My blood killed people.
No.
Fear killed people. Greed killed people. Your blood is just a tool, like a sword or a book. It's what people choose to do with it that matters. On the third day, they reached the mountains. The terrain grew steep and treacherous, the air thin and cold. Kai's breath came in white puffs, and Varric gave him an extra cloak from his pack, thick wool that smelled of cedar and age. We should rest, Varric said as they paused on a narrow ledge overlooking a vast valley. You're exhausted.
Ai fine.
You're shivering and your lips are turning blue. Very much not fine. Varric guided him to a sheltered outcropping. Tell me about yourself. Your life before all this chaos. Kai hesitated, then found himself talking. About the orphanage that burned. About 4 years on the streets, stealing to survive, sleeping in warehouses. About the loneliness of being nobody, having nobody. I was found as a baby, he said quietly. Left at the orphanage with just a blanket and a medallion. The headmistress kept the medallion, said she'd give it to me when I was older. But then the fire happened, and he shrugged. Everything was lost. Describe the medallion. Silver.
Round.
Had some kind of symbol on it, looked like a sun with rays spreading out, but the rays were also like tree roots growing down. Varric went very still. The bright veins crest. What? The symbol you just described. It's the family crest of Alara Bright Veins. The last known sunlight blood. Varric leaned forward, intensity in his pale eyes. Kai, whoever left you at that orphanage wasn't abandoning you. They were hiding you. That medallion was a message. Proof of your lineage, kept safe until you were old enough to understand. But the headmistress died in the fire. If she never told anyone, then maybe someone didn't want you to know. Or maybe they planned to reveal it at the right time, and that time never came. Varric stood, pacing the small space. Either way, it confirms what I suspected. You're not just any sunlight blood. You're a direct descendant of the Bright Veins line. The strongest, purest bloodline that ever existed. Kai felt dizzy, and not from the altitude. What does that mean? It means your power is likely far greater than even you realize. The burst of light you used against the hunters? That was instinct uncontrolled. With training, you could do so much more. Varric knelt beside him. It also means you're in even more danger than I thought. If King Theron discovers you're a Bright Veins heir, he won't just want to control you. He'll want to eliminate you. You're a living reminder of his greatest atrocity. So what do? We get you to my sanctuary. We train you. We figure out how to keep you alive long enough to. Varric stopped mid-sentence, head snapping toward the narrow trail they'd climbed. His body tensed, predator instincts flaring. What is it?
Quem espered?
Riders. Coming fast, Varric cursed softly. Multiple horses. Moving with vampire speed. The King's Knights. Worse, Varric grabbed Kai's arm, pulling him toward the cliff face. They're coming from the south and the north. We're surrounded. Through the mountain mist, Kai heard them. The thunder of hoofbeats echoing off stone walls. Dozens of them, maybe more, moving to cut off any escape route. The frozen bridge, Varric said urgently. It's our only chance. If we can cross before they reach us. They ran, Varric half carrying Kai over the treacherous terrain. The bridge appeared through the mist, an ancient stone span crossing a massive gorge, its surface slick with ice, sections crumbling and unstable. They were halfway across when the knights appeared on both sides. 30 riders in crimson cloaks on the south end, 20 more on the north. They were trapped on a collapsing bridge with a 1,000-foot drop below. The platinum-haired knight from Saltmere urged his horse forward.
Twins.
We've been searching for you for days. Our king requests your presence. Beside Kai, Varric drew a long knife from his cloak. He's not going anywhere with you. Varric the exile, the knight said with recognition and disdain. Still playing hero? Still pretending you can fight against fate? Watch me. The bridge groaned beneath them, ice cracking ominously. The bridge shuddered, and a chunk of stone broke away, tumbling into the misty abyss below. Nobody move, Varric shouted, his voice cutting through the tension. This bridge won't hold much longer. One wrong step, and we all fall. The platinum-haired knight raised his hand, halting the riders behind him. Then let's make this simple. Send the boy across, and we let you live, Varric. King's orders. We're only here for him. Your king murdered his entire family, Varric shot back. 400 years ago. Times change. The king wishes to make amends. Kai looked between them, his heart hammering. The bridge groaned again, more ice cracking loose. Below, he couldn't even see the bottom through the thick mountain fog, just an endless drop into nothing. What happens if I go with you? Kai called out. The Platinum Knight's expression softened slightly. You'll be brought to Silvercrest Castle as an honored guest. The king wishes to speak with you, to explain your heritage, to offer you protection. Protection? Varric laughed bitterly. You mean imprisonment? He'll lock the boy away, study his blood, use him as a living resource for the vampire nobility. That's a lie. Another knight spoke up, a woman with silver-braided hair. Lady Morell herself has vouched for his safety. She swore an oath that no harm would come to him. Kai remembered Morell's silver eyes, the genuine shock and wonder in her face when his blood had healed her. She hadn't seemed cruel. She'd seemed amazed, almost reverent. I was there when Theron executed the last Brightbane's village, Varric said quietly, his eyes never leaving the knights. I watched him justify it with the same words: protection, necessity, the greater good. And I swore I'd never let it happen again. You swore a lot of things, Exile, the Platinum Knight replied, including an oath of loyalty to your king. How did that work out? The bridge cracked louder. A vertical split appeared in the stone near Kai's feet. We need to decide now, the silver-haired knight called out. This bridge is collapsing. Kai looked down at his hands. They were glowing faintly again, responding to his fear. Golden light pulsed beneath his skin like a second heartbeat. He thought about the past 3 days with Varric, the patience, the stories, the genuine care. The vampire had saved him, taught him, asked for nothing in return. But he also thought about his blood, about how it had healed Morell instantly, about the power that supposedly existed in his veins, power to change vampires, to bridge species, to do things that hadn't been possible in 4 centuries. What if I want to go? Kai said softly. Varric's head whipped around. What? I need answers, Varric. Real answers. About who I am, where I came from, why my blood does what it does. Kai met his eyes. You've taught me so much, but you don't have all the answers. The king does. He was there when my ancestors died. He knows what I am. He'll use you. Maybe. Kai looked at the assembled knights, at their armor and their weapons and their perfect formation. But what if he doesn't? What if Lady Morell is telling the truth? What if they really do just want to help? Kai, listen to me very carefully. Varric gripped his shoulder. Men like Theron don't change. Power doesn't make people merciful. It makes them convinced their cruelty is justified. Another crack split the bridge, this time horizontal. The entire structure shifted, tilting slightly toward the southern cliff face. We're out of time, the silver-haired knight shouted. Everyone off the bridge now. But as the knights started to back away, something unexpected happened. They didn't retreat to safety. Instead, Every knight on both sides of the bridge dropped to one knee, heads bowed. "What are you doing?" Varric demanded. The platinum-haired knight spoke, his voice carrying across the dying bridge. "Kai Brightveins, last heir of the Daybreak bloodline. By order of King Theron, we are commanded to protect you. Not capture. Not harm.
Protect.
Even if that means dying on this bridge." "You're insane," Varric breathed. "We're loyal," the knight raised his head, and Kai saw genuine conviction in his eyes. "Our orders are clear. If this bridge falls, we fall with you. If you choose to cross to us, we escort you safely. If you choose to go with Varric, we let you go. The choice is yours and yours alone." Kai stared at the kneeling knights. 50 vampires, ancient and powerful, bowing to a 15-year-old human boy. The bridge groaned its final warning. Sections on both ends were crumbling now, the center span sagging dangerously. "Kai," Varric said urgently.
Please. Don't trust them.
"I can't protect you if you go to Silvercrest." "I know," Kai looked at the vampire who'd saved his life, who'd treated him with kindness, when everyone else saw only a prize to be won. "But I can't keep running forever. And maybe," he glanced at his glowing hands, "maybe I'm supposed to be more than just someone hiding from the world." The bridge shifted violently. A support pillar cracked with a sound like thunder. Kai made his choice. He stepped toward the Northern Knights, toward the path that led to Silvercrest Castle. Toward answers, toward danger, toward a destiny he didn't understand but could no longer avoid. "I'm sorry," he said to Varric. Varric's expression was heartbroken, but not surprised. "Don't apologize for being brave," he stepped back, giving Kai space to cross. "But if they hurt you, if they betray you, I'll burn Silvercrest Castle to the ground. I swear it." The Platinum Knight reached out as Kai approached, guiding him to solid ground just as the bridge's center span collapsed completely, plummeting into the foggy abyss with a deafening crash. Varric stood alone on the southern side, separated now by an uncrossable gap. "Take care of him," he called across the chasm, "or I'll make good on my promise." The knights surrounded Kai, not threatening, but protective, their bodies forming a shield against any danger. The Platinum Knight offered him a cloak lined with fur. "Welcome, Kai Brightveins," he said formally. "Let's take you home." As they rode towards Silvercrest, Kai looked back once. Varric was still standing at the cliff's edge, a lone figure watching them go. Then the mountain mist swallowed him, and Kai was alone with his decision. The vampire capital appeared at sunset, rising from the eastern mountains like a crown of silver and shadow. Kai had never seen anything like it. Silvercrest Castle wasn't just a fortress. It was an entire city carved into the mountain face, with spiraling towers that seemed to pierce the clouds and bridges of crystalline stone connecting buildings that defied gravity. Waterfalls cascaded between levels, their mist catching the dying light and creating rainbows that danced across pale walls. It was beautiful and terrifying. The streets filled as their procession entered the main gates. Vampires emerged from doorways and balconies, lining the cobblestone roads to watch. Kai had expected hostility, fear, maybe even hatred. Instead, he saw curiosity, wonder. Some reached out as if to touch him as he passed, only to be gently redirected by the knights. "They've never seen sunlight blood before," the Platinum Knight, who'd introduced himself as Commander Sylvan, explained quietly. "Many thought it was myth. You're living proof of legends. Some myths should stay buried." A voice called from a balcony. A vampire noble in elaborate robes glared down at them. "That boy brings nothing but disaster." But another voice countered from across the street. "He saved Lady Morel. Show some respect." The crowd was divided, Kai realized. Some faces showed hope, even excitement. Others showed suspicion, even fear. He understood both reactions. His blood could heal vampires, but it could also change them, make them powerful enough to upset the fragile balance between species. The royal castle loomed ahead, its gates carved with intricate scenes of vampire history. As they approached, Those massive gates swung open, revealing a courtyard of polished black stone that reflected the first stars appearing overhead. Lady Morel stood waiting at the top of the entrance steps. She wore a gown of deep crimson that seemed to flow like liquid around her, her black hair pinned with silver ornaments, shaped like crescent moons. When her silver eyes found Kai, her face lit with genuine relief. "You're safe," she said as he dismounted. "Thank the old gods, you're safe." "Am I?" Kai asked, more challenge than question. Morel's expression flickered with understanding. "You're frightened. I don't blame you. But I meant what I told my husband's knights. No harm will come to you here. You have my word and my oath." The word of vampires didn't mean much to my ancestors. "No," a deep voice agreed from the doorway. "It didn't." King Theron emerged from the castle's shadows. He was tall and imposing, with platinum hair similar to Commander Sylvan's and eyes like chips of ice. Ancient power radiated from him, not threatening, but undeniable. This was a creature who'd lived for centuries, who'd seen empires rise and fall. He descended the steps slowly, and when he reached the bottom, he did something that made the assembled crowd gasp. He knelt. The vampire king knelt before a human boy in the center of his own courtyard. "Kai Bright Veins," Theron said, his voice carrying across the silent space. 400 years ago, I led the purge that destroyed your family. I justified it as necessity. Told myself it was for the greater good, that your ancestors' power was too dangerous to exist." He raised his head, meeting Kai's eyes. "I was wrong, and I've carried that shame ever since." Kai's hands trembled. This was the vampire who'd ordered his bloodline's extinction. The monster from Varric's stories. But kneeling there in the starlight, he just looked tired and old and genuinely regretful. "Why should I believe you?"
Kai asked.
"You shouldn't." "Not yet," Theron stood, but didn't move closer. "Belief must be earned. So let me offer you something no one offered your ancestors. Choice. You're free to leave whenever you wish. Free to explore the castle, to speak with anyone, to learn about your heritage. My knights will protect you, but they won't imprison you. And if I want to leave right now, then you leave." Theron gestured to the open gates. "Though I hope you'll stay at least long enough to hear the truth about your bloodline. About why you're not just a Bright Veins heir, but possibly the key to preventing another war."
"Bah."
Kai's stomach dropped. "What war?" Morel stepped forward. "Perhaps we should discuss this inside, where it's more comfortable." Kai's been traveling for days. He must be exhausted. She was right. Kai's legs felt like they might give out any moment. The ride had been long, his nerves were shredded, and the weight of 50 vampire stares was crushing.
"Fine," he said.
"But I want answers. Real ones. No more secrets." Agreed. Theron led them into the castle. The interior was somehow even more magnificent than the exterior. Vaulted ceilings soared overhead, supported by columns carved to look like ancient trees. Chandeliers of captured starlight, Kai didn't know how else to describe them, cast a soft glow over everything. Tapestries depicting centuries of history lined the walls. They entered a private council chamber where a fire burned in a massive hearth. Comfortable chairs were arranged in a circle rather than around a formal table, a subtle touch that made it feel less like an interrogation. Kai sank into one, and a servant immediately appeared with warm food: bread, cheese, roasted meat, and spiced wine. Human food prepared specifically for him. "Eat first," Morel urged. "Then we'll talk." Kai hadn't realized how hungry he was until the smell hit him. He ate quickly, aware of Theron and Morel watching but trying not to care. When he finally finished, he set down his cup and met the king's gaze. "All right, tell me about this war." Theron leaned forward, fingers steepled. 3 days ago, news of your existence reached the human kingdoms. They know a sunlight blood has returned, and they're terrified.
"Why?"
"I haven't done anything to them. They fear what you represent. A power that could make vampires unstoppable. Theron pulled out a sealed letter, breaking the wax to reveal its contents. This arrived yesterday. It's from the Coalition of Human Realms, 5 kingdoms banded together. They're demanding your execution, claiming you're a threat to humanity's survival. Kai's blood went cold. They want me dead. They're sending an army, Morel said softly. 10,000 soldiers, marching toward our borders. They'll arrive within the week. They'll demand we surrender you, Theron continued. And if we refuse, they'll declare war. A war that will cost thousands of lives on both sides. Kai stared at them, his mind reeling. This is my fault. All these people are going to die, because of me. No, Theron's voice was firm. They'll die because of fear and old hatreds. Because humans and vampires still can't see past their prejudices, he stood, moving to a window that overlooked the mountain ranges. But perhaps you could change that.
How?
I'm just one person. One stupid kid who didn't even know what he was until a week ago. You're the first bridge between our species in 400 years, Morel said gently. Your blood heals us. It could heal the hatred too, if given the chance. Kai looked down at his hands, ordinary, scarred from street life, still faintly glowing with that impossible golden light. What do you want me to do? Theron turned from the window. Help us prove that sunlight blood isn't a weapon. That it's a gift meant to unite, not divide. Stand with us when the human armies arrive, and show both sides there's another way. And if they don't listen? The king's expression darkened. Then we fight, and history repeats itself in blood. Kai barely slept that night. They'd given him a room in the castle's guest wing, luxurious beyond anything he'd ever experienced, with a bed soft as clouds and windows overlooking the mountain valleys. But comfort couldn't quiet his racing thoughts. An army was coming because of him. People would die because of what he was. At dawn, a soft knock came at his door. Enter, Kai called, expecting a servant. Instead, Theron stepped inside, carrying a leather-bound book that looked older than the castle itself. The king's face was drawn, as if he hadn't slept either. I promised you answers, Theron said. I think it's time you had them. He set the book on a table by the window and carefully opened it. The pages were yellowed parchment covered in elegant handwriting, some sections illustrated with detailed drawings. Kai saw sketches of people with light radiating from their bodies, family trees with names in a script he couldn't read, and maps of territories that no longer existed. This is the Bright Veins Chronicle, Theron explained. The complete history of your bloodline, recorded over 8 centuries. It's one of the few things I saved from the purge, he paused. One of the few things I couldn't bring myself to destroy. Kai approached cautiously, drawn to spite himself. Why keep it? Guilt, perhaps. Or hope that someday I might be able to make amends. Theron turned pages until he found a specific illustration, a woman with dark hair and eyes that seemed to glow gold even in the drawing. Alara Bright Veins. The last known sunlight blood before you. She was remarkable. There was something in his voice, a softness, almost reverence. You knew her, Kai said. I loved her. The words hung in the air like a confession. Before I became king, before the purge, before everything fell apart. Alara and I were, he closed his eyes briefly. We believed we could change the world. That love between a vampire and a sunlight blood could prove our species could coexist. Kai stared at him. But you killed her people. I didn't kill her, Theron's voice was hollow. My father did. When he discovered our relationship, he declared it an abomination. Ordered the complete extinction of the sunlight-blooded to ensure no vampire would ever be corrupted by such a bond again. He opened his eyes, and Kai saw centuries of pain in them. I tried to stop it. Tried to protect Alara's village. But I was just a prince then, powerless against a king's decree. What happened to her? I helped her escape the night before the attack. Gave her everything I could, gold, supplies, and this. Theron reached into his coat and pulled out a silver medallion. The same symbol Kai had described to Varric, a sun with rays spreading down like roots. Kai's breath caught. That's impossible. My medallion was destroyed in the orphanage fire. This isn't yours. This is Alara's, the original. Theron held it out. I've kept it all these years. A reminder of what I failed to protect. Kai took the medallion with trembling hands. It was warm to the touch, and the moment his skin made contact, it began to glow. Soft golden light spread through the silver, illuminating intricate details he couldn't see before, tiny script engraved along the edges. It recognizes your blood, Theron said quietly. Only a bright vein's air can make it shine like that. But how am I here? If Alara escaped, if she survived, why didn't anyone know about her bloodline continuing? Because she did exactly what I told her to do. She vanished completely. Changed her name, hid her power, lived as a normal human. Theron turned another page in the chronicle, revealing a family tree that ended with Alara's name. Before she left, she was already pregnant. With my child. The world tilted. You're saying I'm Kai couldn't finish the sentence. My descendant. Great-great-great-grandson. If the timeline is correct, Theron's expression was complicated, grief, hope, fear all mixed together. Half vampire, half sunlight blood. The only hybrid that's ever existed. That's why my blood is different, Kai breathed. Why it's more powerful than the record suggested. Why I can survive the golden bursts without dying.
Yes.
The vampire half of your heritage makes you resilient enough to channel the sunlight blood without burning out. Theron moved to the window, looking out over his kingdom. Alara made me promise never to search for her or her child. She said our bloodlines should never meet again, that it was too dangerous. But fate, it seems, had other plans. Kai sank into a chair, the medallion clutched in his fist. Everything he'd believed about himself was wrong. He wasn't just some orphan street kid. He was the grandson, many times removed, of a vampire king. His blood was legendary because it was literally unique in all of history. Does this mean I'm immortal? Will I become a vampire when I'm older? I don't know. Theron's honesty was almost refreshing. There's never been anyone like you to study. You might age normally. You might stop aging at some point. You might develop vampire traits or remain fully human. We're in uncharted territory. The human kingdoms, Kai said slowly. They're not just afraid of what my blood can do to vampires. They're afraid of what I represent. Proof that humans and vampires can create something new together.
Exactly.
You're evidence that the boundaries between our species aren't as absolute as everyone believes. That threatens centuries of carefully maintained separation. Theron turned back to face him. Which is why the Coalition wants you dead. Not just for safety, for ideology. A knock at the door interrupted them. Commander Sylvan entered, his face grim. My king. The human army has been spotted. They're moving faster than expected. They'll reach our borders by tomorrow evening, not in a week. Theron's jaw tightened. How many? Scouts report 15,000. They've added reinforcements. Sylvan glanced at Kai. And they're carrying banners that read, Death to the Abomination. They're not coming to negotiate. Kai stood, the medallion still glowing in his hand. What if I surrender? What if I go to them, let them do whatever they want? Would that stop the war? No, Theron's voice was absolute. They'd kill you, and then still demand we pay reparations for harboring you. Some conflicts are looking for any excuse to happen. This is one of them. Then what do we do? Morel appeared in the doorway, her expression troubled. The vampire houses are gathering in the throne room. Half are calling for war. The other half are calling for your immediate execution to appease the humans. She looked at Kai with sympathy.
I'm sorry.
But you need to address the court.
Now.
Before this decision is taken out of our hands. Kai looked down at himself, still wearing the travel-stained clothes from the road, still just a skinny teenager who'd been sleeping in warehouses a week ago. Now he was supposed to address an ancient vampire court and somehow convince them not to start a war. I don't know what to say to them. Theron placed a hand on his shoulder. The first time he touched Kai, and his grip was surprisingly gentle. Tell them the truth. Show them what you showed me. Sometimes the simple fact of existence is the most powerful argument. The medallion pulsed warm in Kai's hand, Alera's light mixing with his own. "All right," he said. "Let's go face an angry vampire court. What's the worst that could happen?" Sylvan and Morel exchanged glances, but said nothing, which was somehow more terrifying than any answer they could have given. The throne room was a battlefield before any swords were drawn. Kai stood at the center of a circular marble floor, surrounded by tiers of balconies where vampire nobility watched with predatory intensity. There had to be 200 of them, lords and ladies in elaborate finery, ancient warriors in ceremonial armor, scholars in dark robes, all staring at him with expressions ranging from curious to openly hostile. Theron sat on his throne at the far end of the chamber, Morel standing at his right hand. Commander Sylvan stood at Kai's shoulder, close enough to protect but not so close as to make Kai look weak. "Let him speak." Theron's voice commanded silence. A vampire lord in crimson robes stepped forward on one of the upper balconies. "Why should we listen to a human child? He's brought war to our doorstep. The honorable solution is simple. Hand him over to the human armies and be done with it." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. "Hand me over and they'll still attack," Kai called out, surprised by how steady his voice sounded. "They're not coming for justice. They're coming because they're afraid. Afraid of what I represent." "And what do you represent, boy?" Another voice, this one female and sharp. "You're an accident. A mistake that should have been corrected 400 years ago." Kai felt anger flare in his chest, felt his blood respond with a warm pulse of light. He forced it down. "I represent what happens when both sides stop killing long enough to let something new exist. My ancestor Alera survived the purge. She had a child, a hybrid child, and that bloodline led to me." Gasps echoed through the chamber. Clearly not everyone had been informed of his true heritage. "A hybrid?" The crimson-robed lord looked horrified. "That's even worse. You're an abomination against both species. Or I'm proof that there's another way forward." Kai pulled out Alera's medallion, letting it catch the light. It glowed golden in response to his touch, bright enough that vampires on the lower tiers shielded their eyes. "This medallion belonged to Alera Bright Veins. It responds to my blood because I'm her descendant. Because the bloodline your king tried to destroy refused to die." "Enough speeches," a scarred warrior vampire interrupted. "The humans have 15,000 soldiers marching on our borders.
What do you propose we do about that?"
"Ask them nicely to go home." "I propose we show them I'm not a weapon." "You are a weapon," the warrior shot back. "Your blood can make us immune to sunlight.
Can heal our fading.
Can turn the weakest vampire into something powerful enough to challenge human kingdoms. They're right to fear you. Then let them see I won't be used that way." Kai looked up at the tiers of watching faces. "I won't let my blood be harvested. Won't let it be weaponized. Won't let either side turn me into a tool for domination." Pretty words from someone who has no power here, the Crimson Lord sneered. "You're surrounded by creatures who could drain you dry before you took 3 steps. What makes you think you have any choice in the matter?" The threat hung in the air. Kai felt Sylvan tense beside him, hand moving toward his sword. But Theron raised a hand, stopping him. "Because I've declared him under royal protection," Theron said coldly. "And anyone who touches him without his permission will answer to me personally. Are we clear, Lord Corvus?" The crimson-robed vampire, Corvus, bowed slightly, but his expression remained venomous. "Of course, my king. But protection won't stop 15,000 soldiers. We need a battle strategy, not moral philosophy." A commotion at the throne room's entrance interrupted the debate. A messenger burst in, covered in road dust, breathing hard despite Vampire's usual composure. "My king, the human army has reached the western border. They've set up siege positions around the mountain passes." The messenger's voice shook. "And they've sent an envoy. He's demanding entry to deliver terms." "Terms?" Morel's expression darkened. "They're not even pretending to negotiate. They're dictating." "Let him in," Theron ordered. Let's hear what they have to say. The throne room doors opened again, and a human man entered flanked by vampire guards. He wore the formal uniform of a royal ambassador, navy blue with gold trim, but his hand rested on his sword hilt, and his eyes were hard as flint. He walked straight to the center of the room, stopping a few feet from Kai. His gaze raked over Kai with barely concealed disgust. I am Ambassador Henrik of the Coalition Realms, he announced. I bring terms from the 5 human kingdoms. He pulled out a scroll and read in a flat voice. Surrender the creature, known as Kai Brightveins, for immediate execution. Pay reparations of 50,000 gold sovereigns for harboring an existential threat to humanity. Open your borders to human inspectors to ensure no other such abominations exist. Accept these terms within 24 hours, or face total war. Silence fell over the throne room. Those aren't terms, Theron said quietly. That's an ultimatum designed to be rejected. Call it what you like, Henrik's lip curled. But understand this. We have 15,000 soldiers, siege weapons, and silver armaments specifically designed to kill vampires. We've spent centuries preparing for this possibility. You may win battles with your speed and strength, but we will win the war through sheer numbers. You'll slaughter thousands on both sides, Morel said, her voice shaking with anger. For what? To kill one boy who's done nothing but try to survive. To eliminate a threat before it grows, Henrik finally looked directly at Kai. Your very existence destabilizes the balance we've maintained for 400 years. Better you die now than in 20 years when you've created an army of daywalking vampires. Kai stepped forward, close enough that Henrik instinctively reached for his sword. What if I could prove I'm not a threat? Kai asked. What if I could show your generals, your kings, that my blood heals instead of destroys? There's no proof that would satisfy them. They've already decided you must die. Then they're cowards, Kai said, loud enough for the entire throne room to hear. Too afraid of change to see any other path. Just like some of the vampires in this room who want to kill me or use me because they can't imagine a third option. Henrik's face reddened. You dare call the coalition cowards? I call anyone who chooses war over conversation a coward. Human or vampire, Kai turned, addressing both Henrik and the assembled vampire court. I'm 15 years old. I've been homeless, hungry, and terrified for most of my life. And even I know that killing should be the last option, not the first. Enough, Theron stood, his presence commanding immediate attention. Ambassador Henrik, return to your generals. Tell them we reject their terms. Tell them we will defend our sovereignty and our guest. And tell them, he paused, his ancient eyes gleaming. Tell them that if they want war, they'll get a war they'll never forget.
Henrik powiedz Tiflu.
So be it. The coalition's blood will be on your hands. No, Kai said as the ambassador turned to leave. It'll be on everyone's hands. That's how war works. Everyone loses something. Henrik paused at the door, looking back with something that might have been regret. Then he was gone, and the throne room exploded into chaos. Vampires shouted over each other, some demanding immediate military mobilization, others calling for Kai's execution to appease the humans, still others arguing for evacuation of the civilian districts. Through it all, Kai stood at the center of the marble floor, the medallion warm in his hand, and wondered if there was any way to stop what was coming. Or if his existence had already sealed everyone's fate. The war came at dawn. Kai stood on Silvercrest's highest tower, watching the human army advance across the valley. 15,000 soldiers in perfect formation, their armor glinting like scales on a massive serpent. Siege towers rolled forward on enormous wheels. Catapults were being positioned on the ridgeline. Banners snapped in the mountain wind, all bearing the coalition symbol. A broken chain, representing freedom from vampire tyranny. Below in the castle, vampire warriors were arming themselves. Ancient swords that had tasted blood in 100 battles. Armor passed down through centuries. Magic-infused weapons that could cut through steel like paper. So much death, preparing to meet itself. There has to be another way, Kai whispered. There isn't. Theron had approached silently, joining him at the tower's edge. I've lived 800 years. I've seen dozens of wars. Once armies are mobilized, once pride is engaged, nothing stops them except exhaustion and blood. Then I'll stop them differently. Kai turned from the window and walked toward the stairs. Theron caught his arm. What are you planning? Something stupid. Something that'll probably get me killed. Kai met his ancestor's eyes. But if I'm really the bridge between our species, it's time I started acting like it. He descended the tower 3 steps at a time, Theron calling after him. Morel intercepted him in the main courtyard where vampire warriors were forming ranks. Kai, you should be in the protected chambers. No more hiding, he kept walking toward the main gates. I need to see Commander Sylvan.
Now.
They found him near the gates, coordinating defensive positions. When Kai explained his plan, Sylvan's expression shifted from confused to horrified to reluctantly impressed. That's insane, the commander said. You'll be killed the moment you step onto that battlefield. Maybe. Or maybe I'll show them something worth not killing. Kai looked at the assembled vampire warriors. I need an escort. Just enough to get me to their front lines safely. After that, I go alone. The king will never allow it. The king doesn't have a choice. Kai's voice was harder than he'd ever heard it.
This war is about me.
I'm the only one who can end it before it starts. Theron arrived then, Morel at his side. What he's proposing is suicide. What you're planning is genocide, Kai shot back. Thousands will die today because everyone's too afraid to try anything else. I'm not afraid anymore. That was a lie. He was terrified. But fear had controlled him for too long. If I forbid it? Theron asked quietly. Then I'll know you're no different than your father. Willing to sacrifice others to maintain control, Kai softened slightly. Please. Let me try. If it fails, you can fight your war. But give peace one chance. Theron was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded to Sylvan. Escort him. But if they attack, you bring him back. Understood? Yes, my king. 20 vampire knights rode out with Kai at their center. They carried no weapons except ceremonial swords, and Kai had demanded they lower the crimson cloaks that marked them as warriors. This couldn't look like an attack. The human army saw them coming. Horns blared. Soldiers rushed to defensive positions. Archers drew bowstrings. Kai's heart hammered against his ribs as they approached the coalition front lines. A general rode out to meet them, a grizzled man in battle-scarred armor, his face hard as the mountain stone. Turn back, the general commanded, or we'll fill you with arrows. I'm Kai Brightveins, Kai called out, his voice somehow steady. The one you came here to kill. I'm surrendering myself on one condition. The general's eyes narrowed. We don't negotiate with vampires or their weapons. I'm not a weapon. And I'm not asking you to negotiate. Kai dismounted, walking forward alone despite Sylvan's protest. I'm asking you to watch. He stood in the no-man's land between armies, soldiers on one side, vampires on the other. 15,000 humans watching. 2,000 vampires watching. All of them waiting to see what he'd do. Kai pulled out a knife, not a weapon, just a simple blade from his belt. His hands shook as he pressed it to his palm and cut deep. Golden blood welled up, glowing bright in the morning sun. This is what you fear, he called out, holding up his bleeding hand for everyone to see. Blood that can heal vampires. Blood that could change the balance of power. You're right to be afraid. But fear isn't the same as understanding. He turned to the vampire lines. And you want to use this blood to become stronger. To walk in daylight and break the limitations that define you. You're right to want that. But wanting isn't the same as taking. A wounded soldier was being carried past on a stretcher behind the human lines, a young man, maybe 20, his leg badly broken in a training accident. Kai could see the bone through torn flesh, could hear his gasps of pain. Bring him here, Kai called to the general. Absolutely not. Bring him here, or I walk back to the vampires and you learn nothing. Kai's voice carried absolute conviction. You came here to destroy me because you think I'll harm humanity. Let me prove you wrong. The general hesitated, then nodded. Soldiers carried the wounded man forward, laying the stretcher at Kai's feet. The young soldier looked up with glazed, pain-filled eyes. "This will hurt at first," Kai told him gently. "Then it won't." He pressed his bleeding palm to the soldier's shattered leg. Golden light exploded across the wound. The soldier screamed, then gasped as the light spread through him like living sunshine. The broken bones shifted, realigned, knitted together. Torn flesh closed. Bruising faded. In 30 seconds, the leg was whole again. The soldier sat up, staring at his healed leg in shock.
It's
perfect. I can feel it. There's no pain." A murmur swept through the human army. "Now bring me a vampire," Kai called. He was breathing hard. The healing had taken more energy than he'd expected. "One who's fading. One who's weak." From the vampire lines, an elderly vampire was helped forward. She moved slowly, her once graceful steps now careful and measured. This was what happened to vampires who lived too long. They didn't die, but they faded into hollow shadows of themselves. "May I?" Kai asked her permission. She nodded, extending a trembling hand. Kai pressed his still-bleeding palm to hers. The same golden light. The same transformation. But this time, the change was even more dramatic. Color returned to the vampire's pale skin. Her eyes brightened from dull gray to vibrant silver. She straightened, decades of fading reversing in moments. "I can feel the sun," she whispered in wonder. "For the first time in 200 years, I can feel the warmth of the sun on my skin without burning." Both armies watched in stunned silence. Kai stood between them, swaying slightly from exhaustion, his hand still bleeding gold onto the ground. "I can heal humans," he said. "I can heal vampires. I can bridge the gap between species. But I won't do it for armies. Won't do it for conquerors. Won't do it for anyone who thinks power is more important than peace." He looked at the general, then back at Theron watching from the castle walls. "I'll do it for anyone who asks with respect. For anyone who sees healing instead of weapons." The general dismounted, approaching slowly. "You'd heal our soldiers? Even knowing we came here to kill you?" "I'd heal anyone who needs it. That's what this blood is for, not domination, but mercy." The general stared at him for a long moment. Then slowly he removed his helmet and knelt. "The coalition will withdraw. On my honor as a soldier, we came to destroy a weapon. But you," he shook his head in wonder. "You're something else entirely." Behind him, 15,000 soldiers began lowering their weapons. On the castle walls, Theron raised his hand, and the vampire warriors stood down. The war that could have destroyed both species ended before a single drop of blood was spilled in anger. 3 months later, Kai stood in the castle's healing ward, tending to a line of people that stretched down the hallway. Humans and vampires both, coming for his help. A merchant whose hand had been crushed in an accident. A vampire scholar whose eyes were failing after 8 centuries of reading. A child with a fever that wouldn't break. He healed them all. Morel found him at sunset, exhausted but smiling. "You need to rest. You've been healing for 12 hours straight. There are still people waiting. There will always be people waiting. You can't save everyone in one day." She guided him to a chair. "But you did save everyone when it mattered most." Through the window, Kai could see the results of that day on the battlefield. A permanent healing sanctuary was being built, half funded by human kingdoms, half by vampire houses. A place where both species could come for help, where Kai would teach others about healing, about cooperation, about building bridges instead of walls. Varric had returned too, emerging from exile to help establish a school for studying the old bloodlines. He'd forgiven Kai for choosing the castle, understanding that some choices led to better outcomes than expected. "Do you ever regret it?" Morel asked. "Giving up the chance to just be a normal boy? You'll spend your whole life healing others now."
Kai thought about that.
About the runaway who'd slept in warehouses and stolen to survive. About the frightened child who'd accidentally saved a vampire queen in an alley. "I was never going to be normal," he said finally. But at least this way, I get to be something good. Through the window, the sun set over Silvercrest Castle, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, daylight and night bleeding together in perfect balance. Just like the boy who'd bridged them both. The end.